I'm Troy Anderson, the executive editor of Charisma Magazine and Pulitzer Prize-nominated investigative journalist. In this month, we are featuring The Great Convergence, Blood Moons, the Biblical Shemitah, Rise of End-Time Babylon and the Antichrist. This is our End Times issue, and one of the stories is the end really near? And I'm going to tell you about that story right now. The signs: the last of the four blood moons, the biblical Shemitah, rise of end-time Babylon, the Supreme Court decision legalizing same-sex marriage, the dangerous Iranian nuclear deal, and a world drowning in debt and dangling on the edge of economic catastrophe seem unmistakable now. While harbingers of the apocalypse have been gathering for decades, most of the world has largely been oblivious to the gathering tempest and prophetic warnings. This is changing with the sudden appearance of global instability, geopolitically, financially, and culturally, as the world undergoes a remarkably ominous transformation. Today, the world is facing moral and social chaos, spiritual deception, proliferation of the occult, a spate of historic natural disasters, worsening worldwide drought, record-breaking extreme weather, and the growing risk of a nuclear conflagration. Franklin Graham, president of the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, says the defining moment for America and humanity has arrived. As a nation, we have arrogantly turned our back on God, and I believe God's judgment will come against our country, Graham says. Now, as the world awaits whether the last of the four blood moons and the biblical Shemitah will bring economic collapse, war, other calamity, or the fulfillment of prophecies related to Israel, Rabbi Jonathan Cahn says we are now witnessing what appears to be a perfect prophetic storm. For years, I have been warning that America was progressing down a course of apostasy and judgment, says Cahn, author of the New York Times best-selling books The Harbinger and The Mystery of the Shemitah. The harbingers have all manifested. The national departure from God is accelerating almost exponentially. America's relationship with Israel is at an all-time low, and now with the striking down of the biblical definition of marriage, the very order of God, we have crossed a fateful line. It is all converging. In interviews during the past 9 months, several dozen highly respected Bible prophecy scholars told Charisma that they agree the world is now experiencing an unparalleled acceleration and convergence in end-time signs. Dr. Tim LaHaye, Joel C. Rosenberg, Dr. Chuck Missler, Paul McGuire, Pastor Greg Laurie, Dr. Robert Jeffress, Sid Roth, Rabbi Jonathan Bernis, Dr. Thomas Ice, Dr. Ron Rose, and others say that while they may disagree on the prophetic significance of the blood moons and Shemitah prophecies, they overwhelmingly agree that the world is in the run-up to the end-time events predicted by the biblical prophets. Dr. Jack Graham says there is little question now that this very well could be the terminal generation. Everyone senses right now who's got their ear in Scripture and is listening to the Spirit of God that something great, something cataclysmic, something strategic is going to happen in the world, says Dr. Graham, pastor of the 40,000-member Prestonwood Baptist Church in Plano, Texas, one of the largest and fastest-growing megachurches in America. People are talking about it everywhere, that something big is about to happen. And so this is just another element of awareness, the blood moons phenomena, that we can't go on the way we're going. A sizable portion of the public concurs. A recent poll commissioned by Rosenberg, a New York Times best-selling author of numerous prophecy books, found 41% of Americans believe events such as the rebirth of the nation of Israel, the growing threat of war in the Middle East, widespread national disasters, and the serious threat of a global economic depression are evidence that we are living in what the Bible calls the last days. The polls show the highest percentage of both Christians and the general public who recognize we may well be living in the very times our Lord and His prophets warned would exist just prior to the end times, says LaHaye, a renowned prophecy expert, minister, and co-author of the Left Behind series of end times novels that sold 80 million copies. Actually, we have many more signs of the coming end of this world than any generation before us. Israel being drawn back into the Holy Land is the most obvious. However, he gave several others, like the gospel of the kingdom will be preached throughout the world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. Thrilling reports from Wycliffe Bible translators gives us just cause for believing we could be living in the last days. Something is coming. Today, many sense something is coming. As the last of the four blood moons, the biblical Shemitah, Sir Isaac Newton's end-time prediction known as Newton's riddle, and other potential prophetic signs converge this fall and throughout 2016. The blood moons have drawn worldwide media attention. Only 3 times in the last 500 years have 4 blood moons occurred back-to-back and on major Jewish holidays. Each time marked a significant event in Jewish history. In 1493, the Jews had been expelled from Spain, and Columbus had discovered the New World, a sanctuary for Jewish people. In 1948-49, Israel was founded. In 68-67, the Six-Day War was followed by the reunification of Jerusalem to Israel. The fourth tetrad began in April 2014. In October, the second blood moon appeared on the Feast of Tabernacles. Blood moons this year land on the same holy days, including the final one this September. What's occurring now has occurred only 3 times in the past 500 years, and each occurrence brought tragedy and triumph for the Jewish people, says Cornerstone Church pastor John Hagee, author of the New York Times best-selling book, Four Blood Moons. At the same time, financial experts are expressing concerns that unprecedented levels of worldwide debt and economic turmoil roiling Europe, Asia, and other parts of the globe could lead to economic catastrophe. Khan has warned that he believes a great shaking is coming. In The Harbinger, he revealed that the same 9 prophetic manifestations, or harbingers, that appeared in the last days of ancient Israel before its destruction have now reappeared in America. In the mystery of the Shemitah, Khan unveiled a 7-year biblical pattern that has marked the greatest stock market crashes in history, the collapse of economies, the rise and fall of nations, world wars, global cataclysms, and end-time events. What Khan describes as the Super Shemitah, the year of Jubilee that comes at the end of 7 cycles of the 7-year Shemitah, the Hebrew word for the release of debts detailed in Deuteronomy, begins on Yom Kippur, or September 23rd, and runs through September 2016. Whether it comes in this time parameter of the Shemitah or the year following or not, I believe a great shaking is coming to this land and to the world that will involve the collapsing of the American economy, the financial realm, and the removal of blessing and prosperity, Khan told those gathered at the Prophecy in the News conference earlier this year in Orlando, Florida. The shaking doesn't have to take place in the Shemitah year, but I believe we need to be ready. I believe one of the reasons God led me to write The Harbinger and led me to write The Mystery of the Shemitah is because he wants the dots connected when this comes. Will there be judgment or revival? The answer is there could be both. In fact, there can be revival through judgment, but we have to be ready. The hour is late. Dr. Chuck Missler, a prophecy expert, former corporate executive and founder of the Koine House Ministry, says the biggest threat facing America involves the nation's historic levels of debt. A recent study by the McKinsey Global Institute found the nation's total debts, including unfunded liabilities, is not the $17 trillion politicians often cite, but rather the $210 trillion figure, larger than the estimates of the global wealth of planet Earth, Missler says. It doesn't take great scholarship to realize that's unstable. It can't endure, and those debts will never be repaid by any legitimate currency, Missler says. So there is an implosion or collapse of some kind that is inevitable. We don't know the timing or the form it will take, but the people who are bona fide experts in this area are in agreement that there's a correction overdue. Peter Schiff, an economist, frequent guest on national news programs, Chief Executive Officer of Euro-Pacific Capital, and the author of The Real Crash, America's Coming Bankruptcy, says the financial system is in a big bubble that is going to burst. It will have a terrible impact, Schiff says. Americans are able to live beyond their means because of the overvalued dollar. When the dollar collapses, Americans will no longer have that luxury. Our standard of living will be greatly reduced. Are globalists planning a world state? Meanwhile, geopolitical and prophecy experts are sounding the alarm that secret trade pacts, laws undermining American sovereignty, and upcoming United Nations summits on sustainable development and climate change are just a ruse to create what is in effect a world state. Critics have described the UN plans as a, quote, blueprint for governing the entire planet. At the same time, world leaders are calling for a world political authority to address climate change, global poverty, and other crises. The Guardian described this proposed body as a kind of super UN to deal with the world's economic problems and injustices. It almost feels like pages being ripped out of a Left Behind novel, says Dr. Tom Horn, a prophecy expert, lecturer, and radio host. Recently, U.S. Senator Jeff Sessions, R. Alabama, criticized President Obama for pushing global trade pacts that would create a, quote, secret Pacific Union, compromising America's sovereignty and transferring power to an elite set who dream of writing rules in foreign capitals. We already see this happening, says Lori, pastor of the 15,000-member Harvest Christian Fellowship in Riverside, California, and president of Harvest Crusades. Quote, there was a statement by Chuck Hagel, our former Secretary of Defense, who said he sees a new world order emerging. And he wasn't saying it critically. I thought, wow, he's really right. Things are shifting dramatically around the world. Lieutenant General William G. Jerry Boykin, Executive Vice President at the Family Research Council and former U.S. Deputy Undersecretary of Defense, says the world is, quote, definitely moving toward global Marxism. Remarkably, Karl Marx's goal was to dethrone God and destroy capitalism, Boykin says. Once you remove God, you run the path to Marxism, and I believe very much that this is an end-time strategy of the enemy. The concerns about globalism and the push for global governance, a term Hudson Institute fellow Dr. John Fonte says is merely a sugar-coated euphemism for a world government, come as people are being conditioned to believe that the answer to humanity's problems is to have a one-world society with a global government, cashless society, and universal religion. Fonte, author of Sovereignty or Submission, Will Americans Rule Themselves or Be Ruled by Others, says an attempt to create a global political and economic system with a, quote, single global authority is now underway. In a way, this is neo-Nimrodianism. You know, the global governance effort, Fonte told Charisma. It's a type of substitute religion, global governance. In recent years, prophecy experts have expressed growing alarm at this trend, asking whether the end-time geopolitical, economic, religious system known as Mystery Babylon and Babylon the Great in Revelation 17 to 18 is rising. As examples, they note the New York skyscraper that replaced the Twin Towers destroyed in the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks is now called the One World Trade Center, and the European Parliament building in Strasbourg, France, was inspired in part by the Tower of Babel, the center of the first world government ruled by Nimrod, an archetype of the Antichrist. The EU employs the Tower of Babel as a symbol of unity, and several EU buildings feature paintings and statues of a woman riding the beast, an image from Revelation. This concludes the first half of our article, Is the End Near? You can learn more at my website. It's www.troyanderson.us, and you could also order our Paul McGuire and I's investigative book there, The Babylon Code, Solving the Bible's Greatest End Times Mystery. It's hit #1 new release in Christian prophecy books on Amazon several times in recent weeks. The Faith Words Hachette book comes out October 6th. Again, that website's www.troyanderson.us, and you can also find out more at www.faithwords.com/Babylon Code. Thank you.